If 2025 has a single word associated with it, I would say that word is taste. It is this year that we get a little bit of a taste of a world that we are going to dive into much more fully once we get into 2026, and in particular, a little bit of a taste of how different the world is set to be once we get to the end of the decade. I've been saying for a while now that the world we began the 2020s with will be a very different world that we end the 2020s with. Well, this week on March 30th, right out of the gate, as Neptune dips into the sign of Aries, dips out of the very last sign of the zodiac and steps into the very first sign of the zodiac. The god of the seas, of emotion, of a desire to merge with all things, well, moving into a sign that is about the individual. It's about being fired up and trusting your own instincts and going exactly where it is that you feel called to go, no matter what anybody else is doing. Well, on the surface, it might look like a contradiction, but actually this is about an awakening for all of us in one way or another. And that awakening is ultimately to understand what your own personal spiritual mission just might be. The trick is, though, to be honest with ourselves. Where is it that our mission awakening is leading us on a pathway towards greater love and greater wisdom? And where is it taking us off that path? Well, that will be a way in which we can strive to be honest with ourselves. The right path will be loving. However, when it is that we're all caught up in what it is we want, what's got us fired up, sometimes it's hard to see things from that healthy detachment that love sometimes requires, that wisdom asks us to cultivate. And yet here we are, a brand new spiritual sense of what could be possible for us individually and collectively is on the horizon now. Hello, fabulous friends, fans, and superstars. Welcome to your horoscope for the week of March 30th, 2025. I am your astrologer, Nadiya Shah. Thank you for being here. Clothing for this week's episode was gifted by You Kuush.mx. Clothing featuring original artwork inspired by ancient Mexican mythology. Follow them online, links below. Neptune normally takes 160 years to go all the way around the zodiac, and when a big planet like Neptune changes signs, even if it is just for a little bit of a dip, as is the case now, well, we tend to feel it. It speaks to a bigger shift, generational or even collective and cultural as well. Neptune, yes, can be about the actual tides, but it's also the changing tides of what it is that we think is beautiful, what we think is divine, what we think is blessed, what blessings actually are. What gets us inspired, because Neptune is representative of divine inspiration itself. And in this way, Neptune often speaks to trends in things like music and even higher understandings of fashion and other artistic ways in which we might express ourselves personally, but also in terms of larger artistic movements. Brand new, bold, artistic styles, bright colors, lots of reds, golds, black, white, striking forms of art that are not only about visual art, but also in musical styles as well. Very heavy in new types of drum beats might be part of new trends that we welcome in. Well, with Neptune dipping into the sign of Aries between March 30th and the 22nd of October 2025, it is going to be as if everything where it comes to inspired creative expression, well, it just might all look really different really quickly. But there's other ways to understand this energy as well. And we can start to gauge what that might be when we look at more historical factors. What happened the last time that Neptune moved through the sign of Aries? Well, it was actually when we had Neptune in the sign of Pisces that we saw a rise of the theosophy movement and a desire for a connection to everyone and everything, including the cosmos, meant that there was this flourishing of all things having to do with astrology, for example, and other forms of alternative spiritualities and spiritual practices. Well, when it was that Neptune moved into the sign of Aries, well, we had that trend continue, but what we also saw was some of the more fervent and more passionate people who were standing against these particular practices as well. That's something we see historically. Now, what we also see is this sign of Aries having to do with divine warriorism, right? What it is that we might do to go to battle, to go to war. Well, there's this whole spiritual lens with which we bring to the battles that we feel that we must fight. The key is, though, of course, to maintain a healthy sense of faith. When faith is healthy, it questions itself. And when faith is healthy, it wanes. But when it is that we don't question faith, when it is that we are absolutely singular in what it is that we believe, well, we don't always realize that we're actually going about creating a lot of pain in others. And in fact, we might see, or some of us might see, the fight itself as being something spiritual when maybe that isn't really the case. Aries being a sign that is entrepreneurial and pioneering, well, we see this spiritualization of those who harness their free will, who decided what success they were going to align with and go with and gave it their all. You know, that proverbial cliche, pulling yourself up by the bootstraps kind of energy. We might glorify people who we think exemplify these very examples. And yet, at the same time, remember, we do have Pluto in Aquarius. And very soon, as we navigate later into this year, we're going to have Uranus moving into the sign of Gemini. And what that means is, these energies of Aquarius and Gemini, they're very social. They're about looking out for each other. They're about considering how whatever might be happening is contributing to or is benefiting the larger collective. Well, where is it that the individual is able to really harness their will and go their own way? And where is it that certain social supports are there to help one to really maximize their free will that much more? That might be part of an important discussion that we start having this year. Societies throughout history have often glorified the athlete as representative of some of the higher attributes of what it is to be a human being and to work towards what it is that you hope to achieve. And that can be very beautiful. And yes, we may see some very inspired examples of people overcoming great odds, but we might also have to face at exactly what cost those battles were won. A greater spiritual focus on athleticism, glorifying the athlete. But what might also happen here is seeing how the ways in which athletes gain an advantage, well, those lines might get even more blurry with certain substances being able to be used that are undetectable or nearly undetectable. Spiritualizing and showing greater compassion for the variety of gender expression, for sexual expression, that's part of Aries energy as well. Well, it may be under this vibe that we're able to see all of the ways in which we're able to bring forward the divine feminine, the divine masculine, and everything in between with a greater sense of compassion and acceptance. Spirituality rooted in free will and deciding on your religious beliefs, your spiritual beliefs for yourself. Well, that just might be one of the more empowering ways this energy does come forward, with greater freedom to explore and decide for yourself what your relationship with higher power is going to be. But remember, this is a taste. I think that's the fourth time I'm saying that word in this video so far. And what that means is we are going to step into this brand new energy before Neptune moves back into the sign of Pisces just before Valentine's Day. And that is going to provide us with an interesting contrast, but also a bit of a respite where we get to see what it is that we've understood our interconnectedness to everyone and everything to be, and where now a new understanding of the individual is ready to emerge. This is the very beginning of a really long transit, but it is also the beginning of what ultimately is setting up the great sextile, a major configuration that, again, we get mighty close to perfecting this year, in the middle of this year, but next year it reaches precision. And this is that big turning point energy between the world we started the 2020s with and the world we end the 2020s with. But in many ways, it's been in the works all this time. Now it's going to start to be that much more obvious. I'll talk a lot more about Neptune in Aries once we get to the later part of this video, to the short horoscopes for each sign. I touched on it in the month ahead horoscopes for your sign here on my YouTube channel, and also in the decade ahead horoscopes that you can find over on my website, NadiyaShah.com. As we start the week, retrograde Mercury will retrograde back into the sign of Pisces. This is an important moment as Mercury, now retrograde, moves back and forth and now back again into the sign of Pisces after being in the sign of Aries. And in many ways, what's happening with Mercury and with Venus, for that matter, is that these planets moving between Pisces and Aries are really mirroring what it is that we are in the midst of in terms of how these big planets like Neptune with this week, but also a little bit later this year with Saturn as well, moving out of Pisces and back into Pisces. Well, it is Mercury and Venus that are helping us to personalize and make sense of these really big changes that are in the works now, and what role we as individuals will play in these big collective changes. And as Mercury retrogrades into Pisces, immediately moves to connect with Neptune. And Neptune is at the very end of the sign of Pisces at this point, and then later that day does step into the sign of Aries. So we are fully immersed in that Piscean vibe, that sense of feeling like we don't necessarily know what's real, of feeling very inspired, of very filled with compassion, maybe even to the point of, I would say for a lot of us, there's going to be this sense of emotion coloring and compassion coloring normal, rational thought processes. And sometimes that can be a really good thing, to realize that we have an awareness of our connection to each other, to everyone, to everything. It's going to feel right on the surface just before it is that more people feel more in touch with their own sense of agency and their own sense of individuality as well. Now, the sky kicks up again as we get to the end of the week. It is going to be on Friday. Big, important events taking place in the sky. One is Saturn speaking in harmony with Uranus. This is a rare configuration with big planets like this speaking in harmony. And I know that a lot of attention is going to be going to Neptune, rightfully so. When a big planet changes signs, yeah, that's a shift we feel. But when it is that Saturn and Uranus are communicating in this way, this is the ability to take what otherwise would just be an idea or a flash of insight and to be able to manifest very quickly from that place of inspiration. It is Saturn that is about structure. It is about rootedness and being honest with ourselves of the reality of our situations. But Uranus is about leaping into the future. As much as Neptune changing signs represents us moving forward into new cycles, Saturn speaking in harmony with Uranus is, in its own right, a sense of us leaping forward as well, moving into a future that feels like we're able to be that much more ourselves, and we're able to manifest things that feel in alignment with what it is that is true to us. Make no mistake, this is a very fortunate vibration, but it does require us to take ownership for it. That's the thing with the sextile. When it is the type of harmonious connection that astrologers call a trine, well, good stuff just sort of shows up. It happens. But when it is a sextile, it's like we have to identify, we have to be aware of the fact that we are feeling like we want things to be better. It's identifying opportunity and then taking ownership for what we can do to align with it that much more, to make it come to fruition that much more. That's what we have here. A little bit of attention, a little bit of focus can have us taking leaps and bounds forward in a direction that feels that much more rewarding and that much more as if some truth not only is revealed, but we're able to live it and celebrate it that much more fully. Now, this can be very important news in the context of the economy, and that is because Uranus is in the sign of Taurus, which rules over economic matters, and it is Saturn that speaks to the structures of society as well. There might be some breakthrough decisions that are made, some progress that's made in new forms of understanding not only how to create prosperity, but the means and ways in which we pay for things. So just keep in mind with that about being too much of an early adopter, because Mercury is retrograde. Mercury does speak to commerce. And I do feel, considering that Mercury is hand in hand with Neptune, especially at the start of the week, but really that's energy we'll feel throughout this week. There could be a sense of some new crypto coin, some new form of making payment that's presented that feels really exciting, that feels like a breakthrough, but there are certain kinks that may need to be worked out, right? There are certain things that are not being seen very clearly, whether that has to do with security issues, whether that has to do with overpromising. But before it is that we jump on some brand new form of making payments, we may want to pace ourselves a little bit, maybe not become too much of an early adopter, but that doesn't mean that what's happening now isn't very hopeful. Late Friday, we are going to have Mars set up a larger configuration, joining the party with Saturn and Uranus, speaking in supreme harmony with Saturn, in harmony with Uranus. And Mars brings adrenaline, focus, determination, desire, and it brings with it a certain gutsiness, a sense of wanting to have a breakthrough, wanting to focus one's own energies, one's own determination, to have that sense of fighting for what it is that you really want to experience the breakthrough in. And it is Mars that's going to help us to take ownership for what otherwise might feel largely collective. Mars will help us to personalize these very rare harmonious energies between Saturn and Uranus. This is also a key moment as part of the larger Mars retrograde season. Mars is now direct, but this is the third and final connections that Mars is making with Uranus and with Saturn, representing a key characteristic of this time, representing a way in which we understand a wise course of action so that we're not behaving impulsively, but also through that wisdom, we also are able to tap into a moment and respond to it intelligently, so that ultimately we are having those breakthroughs that help us to manifest a present and a future that we can feel really good about. What I love about this week for us, there's so much here. It is a powerful and meaningful astrological moment. Well, it's got to be Neptune moving into the sign of Aries. This is rare. This is special. It is an extended transit, of Neptune in a brand new sign. And whenever that shift takes place, we feel it. It is profound. It is just under the surface. And because it's Neptune, it's also rather sublime as well. And this is set to change our understanding of spirituality. What does that look like? How is it expressed? What does healthy compassion look like towards ourselves and to others? And new understandings of spiritual truth are likely to emerge at this time for a lot of us out there. A spiritualization of the entrepreneurial impulse, how we're going to embody it, what that looks like for each of us is going to be part of the new considerations that might find us, and so much more. Now, ultimately, because it's Neptune, it is about your relationship, our individual and collective relationships with an understanding of nothing less than the divine, your connection, your relationship with higher power. That is what is about to find a newfound passion. And where it is that it leads you to be more wise and more loving, that's when you know you're on the right track. Well, thank you so much for watching. What do you love about this week? Let me know in the comments below. I love reading you guys. And to prove it to you, here's some of my most recent favorite comments. Thank you to everybody who likes, who comments, who subscribes, who shares, who thumbs up. All of it means so much. You really help the video. You really help the algorithm. You help other people find this video. And I love you so much for that. Thank you. And of course, if you want to know how all this wonderful stuff this week speaks to you in your sign, log on to NadiyaShahSuperstars.com or thefutureismagical.com, where you get expanded exclusive video scopes each and every week for as low as just $3 a month with choose your membership rate. Higher tiers get you things like all access passes to Synchronicity University events, consultations with me, and so much more. All of this in the superstar space at NadiyaShahSuperstars.com. Links are in the description below. And once again, a massive thank you to Kuush.mx. I got to tell you, I met the artist behind this brand. The last time I was in Mexico City, I passed through for just a couple of days in August of 2024. And I was so impressed, and her stuff quickly became some of my favorite stuff to wear. And I went to her and I was like, I love your stuff. I found her again. And so she gifted me this shirt, and I'm super happy to share it with you. And you'll see other clothes of hers that I purchased myself in the weeks and months ahead, because like I said, I love her art. It is entirely original art. It is all rooted in ancient Mexican mythology, spirituality. It is so rich with meaning. And when you get one of these items of clothing, it actually comes with a card that explains to you what myth and what stories are behind the art that has been conceptualized. This, for example, is the goddess of water. There we go. It is the goddess of water. I believe it's the Aztec goddess of water here. And so, yeah, every piece that she has done is brilliant. I resonated with it so strongly. So yeah, if you are so inspired, please follow her online. The artist's name is Paulina. She could use the support, the encouragement, the love, even if you just send her a positive, thumbs up on one of the pictures that she might share on her Instagram, all of it, especially when artists are new or they're coming up. I know how much it means. So to do that would be to give love back to her. And like I said, I just have found so much joy in her art. And that's why I just wanted to celebrate her with you now. Consultations are now available with me and my dear friend Andy of Wise Ass Astrology over on my website, NadiyaShah.com. There are different processes to go about securing a reading with me or with Andy. Now, where it comes to securing a reading with me, the great thing is that the whole process is streamlined. It's straightforward. You go onto the website, you decide how long you want the consultation for. And once you choose the time slot based on seeing the calendar with my availability in it, you choose the time slot you want. You'll be directed to fill out a form. After you fill out the form, you'll be directed to make payment. And after you make payment, you will automatically be sent a Zoom link for that day of our consultation. And what I love about this whole system is that all that info that you put in the form, the Zoom link and everything, it just shows up in my calendar right away on my own computer, on my phone and everything. So I know right away, there you are in my phone and there you are in my calendar. And thank you so much to all those people who've demonstrated such trust, such vulnerability. Doing consultations has quickly become one of my very favorite things to do. And it's been life-changing for me personally. And outside of that, to just be of service, to really experience that sense of connection with people out there. Thank you. Just thank you for your trust. Now, the great thing is, if you like, you can also, or you can instead, book a reading with Andy of Wise Ass Astrology. Now, one of the pluses of that is with Andy, you get to choose your consultation rate. And so if cost is an issue for you, you could go all the way down to just $50 for a consultation with Andy of Wise Ass Astrology. The process is a little bit different there. You are going to go into a calendar, choose a slot that you feel you are available, and then someone from my team coordinates that with Andy. Once it is that a consultation time is confirmed, then you are sent a payment link, you make your payment, and then you are sent the Zoom link, and your actual consultation time is reserved for you then. So it's a little bit of a different process, but it does give you some flexibility in terms of letting Andy know your availability and also deciding how much it is that you want to or desire to actually pay for your consultation. You can do all that by getting a reading with him. Now, I happen to think Andy is one of the most brilliant astrologers out there. I love how insightful he is, and I'm so glad that he is offering readings through my website at this time as well. So there's a lot more to gain and to learn and to understand if you go over to the consultation page over on my website, NadiyaShah.com. Learn more about consultations and book yours now. Links below. And thank you. Thank you so much for this moment with you. Thank you for your trust. I'm so grateful for it. Stay tuned for short horoscopes. I am here in Mexico City right now. I went to a few concerts. You can see the mugs. I got the mug. Don Omar, Shakira. That was a lot of fun. But here I am, and I have just been loving it and connecting with my astrologer friends as well. I had a little gathering of some of my team members and some of my teachers who are out here in Mexico City, and that was a beautiful experience for me as well. And just thank you. I just feel so grateful that I get this moment to touch base with you each and every week. New classes, fingers crossed, are going to be announced this week, so stay tuned for that. We've got a very big dog of an announcement coming up this week that I think is going to excite a whole lot of people. Someone who just never teaches at $5 a class. He's going to be teaching. Really big dog, author of a whole bunch of books. I know a lot of people are going to be super excited about that. I've got a course coming up, a speaker series as well. So be on the lookout for that. Join my newsletter to be one of the first people to get that announcement, and follow me on social media as well. All those links are below. Thank you again for watching. It'll be a great week. Enjoy. If 2025 has a single word associated with it, I would say that word is taste. It is this year that we get a little bit of a taste of a world that we are going to dive into much more fully once we get into 2026. And in particular, a little bit of a taste of how different the world is set to be once we get to the end of the decade. I've been saying for a while now that the world we began the 2020s with will be a very different world that we end the 2020s with. Well, this week on March 30th, right out of the gate, as Neptune dips into the sign of Aries, dips out of the very last sign of the zodiac and steps into the very first sign of the zodiac, the god of the seas, of emotion, of a desire to merge with all things. Well, moving into a sign that is about the individual. It's about being fired up and trusting your own instincts and going exactly where it is that you feel called to go, no matter what anybody else is doing. Well, on the surface, it might look like a contradiction, but actually this is about an awakening for all of us in one way or another. And that awakening is ultimately to understand what your own personal spiritual mission just might be. The trick is, though, to be honest with ourselves. Where is it that our mission awakening is leading us on a pathway towards greater love and greater wisdom? And where is it taking us off that path? Well, that will be a way in which we can strive to be honest with ourselves. The right path will be loving. However, when it is that we're all caught up in what it is we want, what's got us fired up, sometimes it's hard to see things from that healthy detachment that love sometimes requires, that wisdom asks us to cultivate. And yet here we are, a brand new spiritual sense of what could be possible for us individually and collectively is on the horizon now. Now, how Neptune in Aries speaks to you in your sign depends on your sun, moon, and rising sign. Take all three into consideration and synthesize the information to make it unique to you. And of course, if you want even more insights, check out your horoscope up right now for the month ahead on my YouTube channel, Nadiya Shah. And you can get exclusive horoscopes over in the superstar space at thefutureismagical.com. And actually, to look at Neptune and Aries for your sign, I talked about it in the decade ahead horoscopes over on my website, nadiyashah.com. Aries, Neptune can be inspired. It can awaken a spiritual feeling within you, but it can also be rather confusing. In fact, sometimes you don't even realize you are in a Neptune transit while you're in it until it's actually over and the skies clear, the clouds clear, as they say. So make sure you're just being really kind and patient with yourself, knowing that sometimes you won't know if it's inspiration, if it's a message from the divine, or if it's your own fear that might be coloring your self-concept. But where it is that you are grounding your identity and your priorities in, wanting to align with a higher, more loving vision for your life, that's when you're on the right track. So be diligent with being honest with yourself. If you find yourself getting dogmatic to try and make sense of what can feel like a deluge of emotion, well, that could have you reverting to ultimately lesser forms of expression, of understanding divine energy. But where it is that you find yourself growing more compassionate with yourself and with others, well, that'll really help you to bring forward qualities within yourself that you want to magnify that much more. Taurus, with Neptune moving into the sign just before yours, this part of the sky is all about what's happening on levels of soul, psyche, and spirit, but it's also about the unconscious, what you don't necessarily know in a very conscious or immediate sense, which means that your dreams are about to get wild, are about to get super vivid. But it's also possible for some Taurians, there might be moments over the next few years where you find your fears getting particularly strong as well. I'm so sorry to say. So how do you move through that? Well, you acknowledge through diligent self-honesty, where it is perhaps that you are telling yourself it's one thing, it's a message, but it's just your own fears, your own desire to create structure where it feels that there's just a strong sense of a lot happening within that you can't quite put your finger on. For all that, though, this can be remarkable energy for stream of consciousness creation, whether that's writing or art in just about any form. You're able to just be a conduit to bring forward really profound manifestations that help you to feel like you touched the divine. Gemini, Neptune moving into a friendship part of your sky means either that friends, well, who was a friend, who is a friend, and who isn't, well, it just isn't very clear. Sometimes it's going to feel as if certain friends are facilitating a moment of salvation for you, a moment of rescuing you, or at times you might feel the need to rescue one of them. But it's also possible, and I'm so sorry to say say that you might just get swindled, as well as Neptune represents a lack of clarity all around, a weaving of illusion. And that's when it becomes that much more important to strive to stay grounded and true to you. Strive to be rooted in a sense of whom it is that you know yourself to be in the context of your friendships. Where friends demonstrate great compassion, but patience, well, that's when you know that those might be friendships you want to cherish. But where it is that you're finding yourself being self-sacrificing of those things that maybe you just don't have to give, let that be your moment of truth that tells you that there are certain things that some people need to do on their own if they're going to reap maximum benefit. Strive to find that balanced sense of understanding, and your friendships will become that much more meaningful, that much more richer. Cancer, career, social standing, life purpose, and your understanding of a higher, more loving vision for your life. Well, it's all going to get this spiritual infusion. In the best possible sense, you'll be able to weave an illusion to accomplish greater success than you've known before, maybe even aligning with fame by using certain mediums that are part of weaving illusion, like video, like photography, right? All these illusionary types of endeavors, or even healing types of endeavors, are where success becomes that much more possible for you. However, this is also a symbol for trusting a higher, more loving vision for your life and trying not to tell the universe too strictly what it is you think success should be for you. That's when you set yourself up for disappointment. Now, you do want to be careful with bosses and people in positions of authority. Are they being straightforward with you or not? Certain authority figures, well, it might feel that you end up feeling swindled in some way, or that they weren't straightforward with you where they really should have been. For all that, though, where it is that you aspire to be a boss, to be someone in a position of authority, let higher spiritual principles guide you along that path, and you align with a more idealized sense of success than you knew before. Leo, long distance travel, immigration, citizenship, higher learning, legal matters, but mainly this is about faith. This is about your understanding of the world spiritually, religiously, philosophically, politically as well. And you might find yourself very wound up by a sense of ethics or morality or belief. You just want to be a little bit careful with this, right? Either things become way too relative so that morality doesn't matter anymore, or you become way too self-righteous where you're not able to let in other world views. And it can be belief in spirituality that ends up being an escape route to avoid actually acknowledging other types of disappointments that you might have felt or experienced, or to mask your own unhappiness as well. But where it is that you're embracing a spirit of adventure, you might find all kinds of new journeys up ahead, metaphorical and literal. And no matter how mundane it appears on the surface, those journeys could end up being spiritual pilgrimages for you in some way as well. Be mindful of taking on legal matters, for example, or even if you are involved in institutes of higher learning. As much as this can be a sense of feeling as if you're able to really make gains, you're able to ride a very high wave, this can also suggest losses in those areas. So pace yourself and be yourself, but also strive to stay true to yourself, holding on to your own ethics. And where those ethics align you with a more compassionate stance, well, that's when you're on the right track. Virgo, profound change, truth, transformation, regeneration, and wealth. That's what this part of the sky covers. And with Neptune, not a whole lot is very clear. So the great thing about this energy is it can be very healing to a sense of where it is you are ready to embrace healthy transformation. If you are involved in a transformative process, well, whether it's psychological, physical, or otherwise, like miracle transformations and healings can occur now. This can also be an idealization of power as you uniquely define it, or you embracing it and being seen as a benevolent figure of power in your own realm of influence. Because this part of the sky has to do with financial institutions, so everything from grants, loans, bursaries, loans, credit cards, benefits you qualify for. With Neptune, not a whole lot is clear, so you just want to be careful there. Strive to stay honest with yourself about all financial matters. This can be wonderful for paying off certain loans, almost feeling as if you are free of them, cleansed of what it is that you might owe other people or institutions. But it can also be not realizing that something isn't quite right, or certain terms of some agreements that end up costing you way more than you anticipated. So strive to stay honest with you and where it is that you're using this energy for personal self-realization. Well, that's where you're likely to find yourself changing in ways that move you closer to your understanding of the divine itself. Libra, partnerships of all kinds, whether business or love. In fact, this is the idealization of the other, feeling as if someone else is going to rescue you, feeling you found a soulmate. The thing is, though, you want to see some other energies kick in to really feel like whom you are with, or whom you're connecting with even, is someone of real substance, or is it just a dream? Is it just an illusion, something you're telling yourself, or an illusion that they might be weaving? It's hard to see other people clearly, and where you're putting people on a pedestal, which becomes more likely here, that's where you really need to be careful now. But for all that, this can move you in a direction of wanting to align with genuine spiritual partners, wanting to feel a sense of shared spiritual direction. And if it is that you're open to that possibility, well, you can find even richer connections up ahead. It is going to mean you have to get over this hump of illusion, of your own fantasy, your own desire. But once you do, you might find partnerships to be profoundly healing forces in your life, that much more richer and meaningful as well. Scorpio, clients, customers, coworkers, immediate supervisors, these people are those whom either you will feel a sense of spiritual kinship and connection, or there'll be a sense that one or more of one of these types of people isn't being straightforward with you. That's the thing with this. There's just such hope. There's such an idealization that you are inclined to see the best in people, to see people from that perspective of their spiritual path, that you don't realize where they have human frailty. But that lesson might be hard won. For all that, though, this can be truly rewarding experiences where it comes to doing work that feels like it's that much more blessed, rich with spiritual meaning and purpose. For all that, though, this part of the sky also has to do with health. Now, this can bring with it mysterious ailments that can leave just as quickly. Faith healing becomes possible as well, but so can deluding yourself as to what the right treatment really is for you. So strive to take a more balanced approach, complementing practical ways of going about healing if you should need it, and well-being with faith is the way in which you can move towards a greater sense of overall well-being now. Sagittarius, romance, flirtation, and fun. Certain flirtatious moments might feel like an opportunity of great healing, spiritual bliss even as well, and great fun, where you find yourself all caught up in a moment, swept up off your feet. But remember, for every high, there is a low. And that's the great lesson of Neptune. And so enjoy yourself, have fun, whether romantically or outside of that. But also understand that every moment of elation is necessarily going to need balance. And the tendency is there to move towards escapism by going way out and way too far, whether that's with romance or just in activities that you feel are fun for you to do. Life, when balanced, is that much more rewarding overall. Now, creatively, this can be incredibly healing and hopeful energy, where you find yourself plugging into source, being able to create from that space of sort of a natural stream of consciousness, if you will, that is also able to reach that many more people than you have before. Capricorn, home, the past, your living situation, your family of origin, your parents in particular. This is about reconciling with and healing your past. It's connecting with your ancestors, the soul and spirit of them, and recognizing how you embody the best of them and letting the rest go, whatever you don't need to carry into your future. But where it is that you can benefit from what was before, well, that's where your spirit really starts to shine, bringing a more compassionate lens to you in the past, your parents. That can be part of what helps you to be that much more present, creating a home that feels like a sanctuary of sorts, feels like a temple might be part of your inspiration now. A spiritual home-based business might be part of what especially inspires you to create in your own time and space a more rewarding life ahead. Aquarius, siblings, cousins, neighbors, these relationships are about to get a whole lot more healing, or lessons in powerlessness can be part of the energy of this time. But for all that, your mind starts to think much more symbolically, much more compassionately as well. Whether or not you've ever been inclined towards writing, speaking, teaching, or self-expression in that way, you just might surprise yourself with how much it is that you have to say, how much it is you have to communicate, and how colorful those words can be. It is as if you are able to see with eyes of divine love. You're able to see the divine everywhere you look. That helps you to recognize in those smallest moments just how blessed you really are. Now, for all that, if it is that you desire to improve relationships with the type of people I just mentioned, it is going to require more open-heartedness, but this is where you start to see the spiritual lessons behind certain connections that might have been challenging, with an infusion of compassion, become more rewarding. Pisces, with Neptune leaving your sign, in an instant you might feel as if something within you just wakes right up, becomes a lot more clear. But now that Neptune dips into a financial part of your sky, it's about bringing a spiritual lens to your finances. And it is about being honest with yourself about what's worth doing for money and what isn't, and wanting to do something that feels spiritually rewarding, that feels blessed in some way, is going to be part of the mission of this time. For all that, this can be a time when it feels as if the tides of great prosperity come in, but they can go out as well. There's not a lot of stability where it comes to Neptunian energy, but where it is you are rooting how you earn money and how you spend money, whether it is in healing or art or spirituality, well, that's when the potential is there for you to find yourself creating that much more abundance for yourself now. Thank you for watching. It'll be a great transit. Enjoy.